Again, the good news about Chapter 7 is it's only about half the size of the previous chapter. It's like 15 pages. How to work with links and images. How to create an image swap application. How to use timers. And how to do a slideshow application. Let me just say this quickly, and that is the image swap that they do here, the slideshow that they do here. Once we get into jQuery, you'll never want to use this code. Because what they do in tens of lines of code, jQuery does in 1 or 2 lines. So again, the natural question is, okay, I get it. Then why the hell are you showing it to us? Because there are millions of sites out there that were written before the advent of jQuery that still have it done using the old-fashioned way of JavaScript. And people aren't going to go and rewrite them typically because it's the old mentality, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. All right. So the first thing that gets discussed in here is how to cancel the default action of an event. And the way that you do that, if you look up on the screen, please. This line right here. Prevent default. You may want it set up that if somebody clicks a link, you might want to go back and check to make sure, as an example, you might want to, if somebody clicks the submit button even, you might want to go back and if you had a checkbox there that said you agree to the terms of service. If they don't check that checkbox, you might not want to let them go on. You can prevent that from happening using the prevent default. So the prevent default is set up to make sure that whatever would happen normally, naturally, doesn't happen. Quite often it's done so that you can cancel somebody who's clicking a hyperlink if you don't want it to go anywhere. All right? The bad thing, if you'd call it that, is older versions of IE did it differently than everybody else. So as you can see, that's the way you had to do it in IE. So sometimes you'll see people who will write this. You look on the screen here. It's cross-browser compatible. Well, this is going to cover 99.9% of your cases. Because that's people who are not using old versions of IE but are using anything else. That's people who are using older versions like 6 and 7 and below of IE. Now, one thing like with Bootstrap, when I went over Bootstrap with people a year ago, we were working with Bootstrap 3. You're now working with Bootstrap 4. Who cares? One of the things in Bootstrap 4 is they said, we're not going to support anything below IE 10. We don't care. If you've got IE 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, we're not going to support you. That's what a lot of applications are doing today. They're telling people, you have an old, outdated browser. We're not going to support you. And if that's the case, you wouldn't even need to make that check. So again, I'm just giving you the high points. As it says here, modern browsers send an event object to the event handler. So it's going to send a button click or whatever it happens to be. You can do the prevent default to keep that from happening. To ensure cross-browser compatibility, it's always considered best practice to put in both. That said, does everybody do it? Hell no. And again, a lot of people who are writing newer code just say, no, we're not going to support older browsers. All right? All right. Turning up to page 204 says how to preload images. The reason you might want to preload images, let's assume that you're going to write a web page, and on that web page you've got some very intricate, maybe they could be big or whatever, images that are going to take a while to load. Well, again, most people who use websites are not patient people. All right? So what you can do, as it says, an application can load the images before the user event occurs. So it can display images without noticeable delays. It's, for lack of better words, almost tricking the end user. Oh, I can see that it's loading already. All right. It says this may result in a longer delay when the page is initially loaded, but once you start using it, it'll actually appear to happen faster. And they show how you can do that in here. If you look up on the screen, it says how to preload this, how to create an image object. Everybody see that line of code? var image equal new image. That literally is creating what's called an image object. We will talk about those in the second last week of class. That's object-oriented programming. Once you load that in there, then you can give it properties. So now you can say image.source, etc. Why does that matter? Because what you can do is create an array of those images and basically tell them to load before the page itself even loads. And again, the reason that you might want to do that is so that your user will not leave the page. So as it says, when the app preloads images, it loads all images it's going to need when the page loads. And it stores those in the browser's cache, and it grabs them when it needs them. With this image swap application that's on 206, 207, 208, and 209, if you look on the next page here, you've all seen things like this before. You've got the thumbnails up near the top, and then when you click on any of them, boom. Then you've got a choice as a developer. What do you want to do? Do you want to add headings? So that says the big one. The big one is the heading that goes with this. That might be the buffalo or whatever. Do you want to add headings? If you want to add headings, do you add them at the top or do you add them at the bottom? It may not sound like a big thing. It really isn't, but you have to be consistent. You're going to have a heading for one. You have a heading for all of them. You put it for one on the top. You put it for all of them on the top. All right. So when you look at this, and they show you this on page 207, the HTML for this is set up as an unordered list. That unordered list that you see right there, that creates these four things right here. It creates the four thumbnail images. Then what do we put in here? ID equal main image. That's what's going to be set by the JavaScript. So when you click on one of the thumbnails, the JavaScript, notice there's almost no CSS. It's inline, and that just makes sure if we didn't have that CSS line, instead of these things showing all on the same line, there would be one here, then this one would be down here, this one would be down here, this one would be down there. All right. But if we look at the JavaScript that goes along with it on page 209, that's the swap.js. Well, this one we already know. All right. This says on load. So what are we doing here? Well, we're setting some variables, but basically, for lack of better words, we're preloading the images in here. And we're probably going to set it up so when it first runs, the first one is chosen by default. All right. Doesn't have to be that way if you don't want it to be that way. Just like I've shown you in the past, where we go and we set up a drop-down list for state. If it's in alphabetic order, we still can set the default one to Missouri if we want to. All right. The last thing that's in here, the last 6 or 8 pages, talk about timers. I've given you this example before. Guess what? I'm giving it to you again. A one-time timer is a thing that goes off once and then it's gone. Again, it's very similar to the old type of wind-up alarm clocks people had when I was your age. All right, you set it for 6 a.m., it went off, you hit it, there was no snooze, there was nothing. So if you turn it off and went back to sleep, typically we were late for work then, type of an idea. As it says, this type of timer calls typically a function only once. It says to use this, you use the global set timeout. So 2 methods on the top of page 211 for working with a single time timer. You set it and then you clear it, which is like turning it off. But the idea with that is it runs only one time. So as it says here on the bottom of page 211, the set timeout method creates a timer that calls a function once after a delay. All right. Back in the olden days, I may have even mentioned this to you before Word, before Microsoft was Microsoft, basically. All right. A lot of people, rather than using Word, they used another package. It was called WordPerfect. And when I first started using that, it was set up so like every 30 seconds, if you didn't save, it would auto-save for you. So you'd see a message on the bottom of the screen that would say your file is saving. All right. That wasn't a one-time timer. That was a timer that we wanted to run over and over again, or what's referred to on 212 and 213 as an interval timer. All right. So as it says, it calls a function repeatedly. So rather than calling a set timeout, you call a set interval. And you're telling it how often you want it to run. As mentioned on the bottom of page 213, the set interval method creates a timer that calls a function each time the interval has elapsed. So if I wanted something to happen on screen every 5 minutes, I could do that. It works in milliseconds, where 1,000 milliseconds equals 1 second. All right, and the last thing that they show in here on 214 through 217 is a slideshow presentation. This is probably the crudest way you can set up a slideshow. But you set it up using just HTML. Again, notice there's virtually no CSS. There's not much HTML. You again have an unordered list. The key to doing this, again, is in the JavaScript. All right? And I think I'm going to do one more thing, because we are done with the chapter, and it didn't take very long. So I'm going to do one more thing. All right? I'm going to ask that you do this, but of course, as always, I can't order you to do this. All right? Let's talk for a couple minutes, because we have not yet. Let's talk for just a couple minutes about, get rid of that. Okay. About your portfolios that you're going to have to do. All right? The last week that you're in class is time that's set aside for you to work on your portfolio. All right? What should that portfolio look like? That's totally up to you. You will get a spec sheet on it, and that spec sheet will have minimum specifications. All right. I don't know if you know this, but last week at the St. Louis campus on Friday, they had what's called a LAN party, where they had games and stuff. It went from 4 in the afternoon until 4 in the morning on Saturday. The reason I'm telling you that is every time they have a LAN party, they screw up iwt.rankin.edu. And it's usually screwed up for a few days. So I guess I can't show you that. But I'll show you what I wanted to show you. And that is, let's see. I created something, I didn't tell you guys about this yet, but a week from Friday. Everybody hear me? 1 week from Friday. I won't be here for class. We'll still have class. I just won't be here. Why? Because I am going to Parkway Middle School in Manchester, and I've got 25 minutes to show them how to build this. All right? And to build it with virtually no code. And if you want to build it with no code, you can all do this. You don't have to. But if you go out to a place that's called mobyrise.com, and if you can't read it, I'll put it up here, make it bigger. Again, just mobyrise.com will get you there. It is free software. What it does is it'll build a website for you, and it's 100% drag and drop. All right. The good news is, and I'm not trying to be funny here when I say this, the good news is it's 100% drag and drop. The bad news is it's 100% drag and drop. So why am I even saying that? Well, I just want to show this to you. If I come in here and I say mobyrise, there it is. So I bring this up. And so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to sites, and I'm just going to create a new site just so you see it. All right? No, I'm going to skip that. And I'm going to grab this. Okay, it's going to come up and it says click this to start. So what do I want? Okay, well, I want a navigation bar at the top, and I want it to be dark. There it is. That's all I had to do, literally. That wrote the bootstrap for me, and I can come in here. I don't want to say mobyrise, etc. I want it to have my name. All right, I don't want this to be services. I want this to say home. All right, I think you get the idea. It's not a whole heck of a lot of work. All right, so I come down here. Now I want a slideshow. I go down here and I find somewhere sooner or later, there's images and videos, article, features. I don't know where it is right now. Sliders and galleries. All right. So I grab this full screen. I don't want a full screen slider. I'll grab that one right there. I drag it in. Boom. Now I've got the beginning of a slideshow. I can put my own slides in there. There's nothing I have to do to make it work. I come in here and I decide that underneath that slideshow, oh, I don't know. I want something where I can put in some, I'll put in this. Okay? I can change anything that's in here. I can put in my own images. I can put in my own text. Boom, now I've got that. I can put in my own background colors. I'm not showing you any of that right now. And I go down to the bottom and I say somewhere down here is a form. There's one of those accordions I told you about before. Boom, I'll have an accordion in there. If I want to add social media, put that in there. Now I've got that. I get down near the very bottom and I want to put in a footer. All right, I put that in. Now I haven't changed a lick, nothing on here. All right, and what I can do then is I can go back to this and I can run it and I can see what my whole website will look like right now. It's not going to look good because I didn't play with colors or anything. But the point is, I've written nothing. And I've got all that. If you decide that when you are creating your own portfolio, in fact, I will find the spec sheet and I will run off a copy for everyone and email it to you right now. You can do it on this if you want to. All right, you can make a very professional looking site. How do I know that? Well, as an example, Devin here. He was in class last spring. He didn't take this class, and he had to make a portfolio. He said, I don't know how to do HTML. I don't know how to do any of this. What did I tell you? Give you a 5-minute intro on how to use this? He turned in one. The one he turned in was as good as anybody else's with 5 minutes of training. That's what you just had. You don't have to use this. You can write your own using CSS, with JavaScript, with HTML. You can write it yourself with Bootstrap, or you can use something like this. All right. So like I said, I will look for the spec sheet on this, and let's see. And as soon as I find it, I will run off a copy. I'll probably have to update it. So let's see. Okay, I might have to update it a little bit, but what you're going to see in here, if you look up on the screen, please, it's going to look a little funky. This has got all 4 semesters. So this is the one I will run off for the second-year people. All right? But for you guys, I'm just going to have this. So I'm going to have to adjust the points accordingly, because you're only taking 1 class. If you've taken 4 classes, I can make one worth 25 points, all 4 of them 25 points each. But if you've only taken 1 class, I'm going to have to change the way that this is set up. That's all. So I will work on that right now. When I get done, I will email each one of you a copy and get a hard copy and give each one of you a copy. I'll have that hopefully by 10 o'clock. All right? So what should you be doing now? At a minimum, I'm hoping you're going to be looking at the extra exercises. If you haven't finished the ones yet for chapters 2 to 5, get those in. All right? 3 or 4 people still haven't turned in anything. But if you have finished them, then go and look at the extras for 6 and 7, or maybe start with the shorts for 6 and 7. There's only 3 of them. All right? Questions? Tomorrow I'm going to give you some exercises, and we're going to go through them and look at them as a class. So hopefully you understand a little better how to use this stuff. All right?